Hi everybody, this is Maya Good, and today's day 18 of National Novel Writing Month. If you listened or watched yesterday's video, you know that I've really struggled this year and that I had a big decision to make. And I gave myself until the end of today to make that decision, thinking that by tomorrow morning I would really have a better idea of what I wanted to do. What I found was, this is one of the beauties of YouTube, um, yesterday's video really helped me figure out where I needed to go. After I did the video, I sat down and I watched it and I did some thinking and I pulled out my big stack of notes from the writers conference and I looked at my printed copy of the first 3 chapters and I decided, maybe this is a case of the grass being greener on the other side. And so what I did was I began the process of distilling all those notes into something that would be workable, because I can't work with 11 copies of the first 3 chapters of my novel. It's just unwieldy. And I assumed that as I started to distill it, it would be overwhelming and that I would realize I really did just want to complete new words. What I found was I was really focused. And I ended up spending 3 hours working on the editing of of Past. That's the name of the book. And I was happy. I felt as if I was just filled with this joy. And I realized that I love this book. And 3 hours later, I looked at the work I'd done and I knew that my decision had been made. So I looked at the National Novel Writing website. On the website, there's a forum called Rebels. And those are for people that are doing National Novel Writing Month, but they're doing it in a slightly different way. They might be writing a memoir. They might be working on something that has already been started, which are things that you're not technically supposed to do, but people do it. And a lot of the things that people rebel about are actually harder than National Novel Writing Month. And there's a whole group of people there that are editing for National Novel Writing Month. And I was just curious, how do people assess the time that they take in revision? Because for me, editing isn't a matter of just opening up a document and cleaning up words and cleaning up typos and going through it from beginning to end. It really is a complete restructuring, opening up a new document, retyping the entire thing according to the notes that I've taken. And, writing new words is kind of obvious, but how do you track all the time that you actually do spend in revision? There was a couple different ways that people do it. Some people do it by the hour. So they set a timer and they say 1 hour of editing equals 1 to 2,000 words, depending on how fast you normally write. And that made sense, but it's really easy to rack up words a little too quickly. On the high end of that, especially because it's easy to get distracted. There's a difference. You can write for an hour and get 600 words. You could write for an hour and get 2,000 words, just depending on the day. And so I tossed that around in my head. And there was another way of doing it where the time you're spent marking up, if you're actively marking up, is 1,000 words. And the time that you spend retyping is, whichever number is the highest. So if you're working on a scene that in your original novel is 2,000 words and you cut it to 600, you revise 2,000 words. Whereas if your original scene is 2,000 words and you revise it to 3,000, then you've revised 3,000 words. And that seemed fair. So I decided to do a combination of the two. For the time that I actually spend marking up my novel, I'm counting 1 hour as 1,000 words because I'm way more focused when I'm doing the marking up than I ever am when I'm writing. So I feel very comfortable doing that. And then any time that I spend retyping is the higher of whichever word count for a particular scene. And that made me feel better because it was a good structure, and it's a structure a lot of people are using. And so I didn't feel like I was cheating. And I realized that I'm doing more work than I would if I were writing a new novel. And that was reassuring as well. Originally I was like, how would you track editing? Would you just do all the marking up and not count it? And that didn't, it was, it was a little confusing, but sitting down and reading through the editing form was very reassuring. So here's where I'm at right now. I went ahead and printed out the rest of my novel. So here is 267 pages of rough draft. And right now I have 2 notebooks. I'm probably going to need 2 more because I think this is probably only going to cover like maybe 200 words. And so I'm just going to go over real quick what I'm doing right now and what the plan is for the future. So right now I have a huge stack of whoa, sorry about that. These are all of the versions of my manuscript that came out of the writers' conference. Obviously, some notes I'm going to use, some notes I'm going to discard, and I have to make those decisions as I go. But, you know, in the past, I probably would have just taken one, gone through the first 3 chapters, set it down, then taken the next set of notes, gone through the first 3 chapters, set it down. I would have taken 11 passes just to get through all of these revision suggestions. That is not going to work for me. I really need to have all of my notes make sense in a structured way so that when I start retyping, I can just retype the novel. So what I've done is, here's my notebooks. These are my revision notebooks. In the beginning of the first revision notebook, I have several pages that are global changes. These are changes that need to happen throughout the whole novel. Things like POV shifts, things like, do I need to make one character more likable? Questions about how I want the character to appear versus how readers are hearing the character, those types of things, like overreaching novel-wide changes. And those are on the first couple pages, and I'm going to read through those every day that I retype. Then what I've done is, for each page of the manuscript, I gave myself 2 pages to write revision notes. And I'm going through all of these revision notes. And what I'm doing is I'm marking places on my manuscript to refer back to this page. And then next to each of the markings, so I'll have like 1.6 is page 1, 6th line. Really? That was one of the comments from Sam. The next one is 0.1, which is the page before the numbering starts, 1st line. Sam thought Richard was standing. Make opening more clear. Those types of things. And I've done that for the first 40 pages. So, and I've only gone through 2 of the sets of notes, and it literally is taking me forever. It's very nitpicky. And I'm going through and I'm marking all the notes and I'm reviewing them and I'm rereading those chapters and deciding which changes I'm going to keep and which ones I'm not. And then once I've gone through all of these notes, I'm going to read through the entire manuscript with notes of my own, page by page, and any global changes, any big chapter changes, line changes, anything like that is going to go on these lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my manuscript up on my manuscript stand. I'm going to have this notebook open right underneath it for whichever page I'm working on. I'm going to open up a completely fresh document and retype the entire novel, adding, subtracting, changing as I go. And that's how I'm going to do this first revision pass to end up with a first draft. And it feels amazing. One of the reasons why I've just been having such a hard time getting started on this revision is because when I revise short stories, I literally retype the short story like 3 times before I ever get to the point where I'm just making like edits in the document. I'm literally changing and doing deep revision several times. And I had to sit back and think, like, if I do that for short stories, is it too much to do for a novel? Is it going to get overwhelming? Do I need to change my process? And I'm realizing, no, that's just the type of writer I am. Every time I retype my novel, my language gets tighter, it gets more beautiful. Every time I retype my novel, I find things that I didn't see before. I'm adding themes. I'm finding symbolism and fine changes that if I don't retype the novel and I just edit in a document, I overlook. And I had to make peace with that. I had to make peace with the fact that that's the type of writer I am. I'm a slow, detailed editor. And I won't even call it editing at this point. I'll call it revising, because I know that at the end of this revision, my novel is going to be very different, but significantly better, because that's what happens in my short stories. One of my short stories, when I started editing it, I used to keep the drafts until they got to be too big. At one point, I had like 15 drafts, and they were labeled like 1, 2, and each one was very different. The word counts were changing dramatically, but the difference between the first version versus the third version versus the final version was so just night and day. And I would say I learned the most during that process. So that's what I'm going to do for my novel. I've given myself a due date. I want the first pass done by the end of December. It would be nice if I could get like halfway through it by the end of the month, within the next 2 weeks. I'm looking at Holly Lyle's 7-day course just to kind of speed things up a little bit, get some tips from that. I've read through it before, and it has some really good information. But for this first pass, I'm not going to do her long course. I really just want to get through it and clean it up so that I have a good first clean draft to work from. Because the other thing that was really holding me back from editing is that my rough drafts are so messy. And it's one thing to look at a super messy 20-page story. It's another thing to look at a super messy 300-page book. It's just overwhelming. And by doing it this way, I'm not even breaking it up at the scene level. I'm literally revising 1 page at a time. I'm making notes for every single page in the manuscript. By the time I get through everybody's notes, each of these pages will probably be like half full. And then I'll have like a page and a half for my own changes. And I decided to give myself 2 pages, and that way, hopefully, I'll have room to do a second pass using the same notebooks, and I can track my changes and just mark off each one as I go through it. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a ton of work. Like I said, I spent 3 hours, and in those 3 hours, I managed to get through all the global changes that everybody at the writers group suggested, as far as looking at them and deciding whether or not I was going to keep certain ones. I also managed to go through all of the page-by-page changes, line-by-line changes for 2 people. So I think I've got 9 more to go through. I'm going to try to get through them today. And that's what's happening. I feel, the very first video I did for October talked about why to do National Novel Writing Month. And I really had to go back to that video and look at it and ask myself, why am I doing this? Am I doing it just for fun? Am I doing it to have a finished project to self-publish under a pen name? Am I doing it for the joy of it? Am I doing it to further my career? Am I doing it to learn to be a better writer? There's so many reasons to do it, and all of them are valid, but some of them are better for me than others. And I realized that just doing it to have something to self-publish in May isn't making me happy, especially since it wouldn't even be under my own name, but doing it to make my writing better. Doing it to prepare to submit to a writer's conference and get deeper into it over the summer. Doing it to start querying agents is really the step that is my next step. National Novel Writing Month taught me how to write on a regular basis. It taught me that I'm capable of writing. But this year taught me how to be a professional. It taught me how to look at things objectively. And it taught me how to listen to my emotions without fear. In the past, had this happened, I would have assumed that I was feeling bad about myself and I would have forced myself to finish that project. I would have been miserable with it and I would have just been treading water. But over the past 2 years, I've learned so much about myself that I was able to close my eyes and realize that this felt different than years when I was afraid. And that this was different than the usual stall people get right around 20,000 words. And that it was different in a way that was important and that I needed to listen to. So my National Novel Writing Month has changed, and I'm really, really happy with it. If I don't get to the point where I write new words, I will have put in 40 hours of in-depth revision notes and marking. And that is just invaluable. If I can do that more quickly, I'll make a good dent into rewriting the second pass of this book. And I love this book. And I know some of you guys actually, before I pulled the videos, watched me outline this book. And you guys know that I love this book. And many of you love this book. And this is a book that needs to go out in the world. I don't care how many times I have to rewrite it, re-edit it, revise it. This book deserves to be in the world. That's how I feel. And it's a revelation, really. Every year I've learned something. And I think this year I've learned more than any of the other years that I wrote National Novel Writing Month combined. Just the self-assuredness that I feel right now and the love of craft that I am feeling right now and the sheer pleasure I get from going through these manuscripts literally one sentence at a time is something that I didn't expect. I'm loving this. One of the things that made me finally feel secure in looking at tracking my time was the fact that I was in deep revision for 3 hours. I had on video in the background, but I wasn't watching. I was so deep in revision that at the end I passed out. I was exhausted. I was more exhausted marking up this manuscript than I've ever been writing because I was putting so much of myself into it. And that's when I realized that I'm ready. I can do this now. Because in the past, I wouldn't have known enough about writing to have gotten that deep into revision. This last year of reading short story after short story after short story with Literary Roadhouse, of writing short stories and submitting them, and revising things over and over, all of that has just completely changed the way that I write and has helped me grow as a person. Going to the writers' conference was huge. I learned so much. It felt like my brain was just seeping out of my ears. And it literally took me a couple months just to process everything. And I couldn't have written afterwards because I just had so much new information in my head that I had to chew on all of it. And now I'm ready. So I want to thank all of you for your support, for your notes, for your emails. It was so reassuring to get those and to feel your support. You know, it's an interesting thing to put up videos to help people, and then when you need help, the help is right there. People are right there behind you. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, that's cheesy and it's totally cliche, but it is. It's beautiful. And so I want to thank all of you. I am so happy with this decision that it's kind of ridiculous. I'm going to try to get through the rest of all of these suggestions from the conference so I can start reading the rest of this manuscript and coming up with all the changes that I know need to be made on my own. I'm also obviously going to do a pass, one more pass of just rereading it, making my own notations. A lot of the students that were in the class with me were right on. Like, I'm looking at these suggestions. I'm like, yep, yep, yep. I see that. You're totally right. I would have thought that on my own. Totally agree with you. And which is totally different because when I went to the conference, I would not have necessarily seen a lot of that, but I've done so much work in learning craft and reading so many stories that it is at the point where I can read this manuscript now and see what's wrong with it. Whereas last year I couldn't. When I finished past and I started to read it, I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't tell you what to fix. And finally, I can read it and I can see what's wrong. I'm really, really happy right now. So I'm going to cut this off because I'm at 20 minutes now and I did not expect that. I figured this would be a short video. So on that note, ciao.